Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. In this video, I'm working through example 2 of section 6B, the additional medical tax credit. In this example, we've been given a income tax certificate which would come from the medical aid of the taxpayer. Please note that this example is based on a certificate from the 2020 year of assessment, but I just want you to imagine that it's referring to 2021 because that's the year of assessment that you will be assessed on. So the information on the certificate is you've been given contributions for the current year of assessment, 56,304 rands. That you will need as an input into your section 6B calculation. Important to note here are the dates. You can see that this taxpayer was a member of the scheme from 1 March 2019 to 30 November 2019. So that means we'll be working with only 9 months of the tax year. He was a member of the medical aid scheme for only 9 months of the year. Number 2 gives you claims not recovered from the scheme, 838 rands and 65 cents. That would be your qualifying medical expenses. That's expenses that the taxpayer has incurred out of their own pocket, which the medical aid scheme did not reimburse him for. So it would be legitimate expenses. They would meet the definition in the legislation of qualifying medical expenses. You do need that for your section 6B. In fact, this is the criteria that qualifies the taxpayer to claim section 6B, because section 6B says you must have paid qualifying medical expenses, and then we go and do the whole calculation. The third piece of information here is the number of members who are active on the scheme for each month. This information you'll need to work out your section 6A medical tax credit, because for that you need to know who is on the medical aid scheme, who are the main members, who are the dependents, and then you would apply the different rates for the relevant member or dependent. So we can work out section 6A, and then section 6A also forms part of the formula for section 6B. If we're working out section 6A based on the given information here, you can see that there is a main member and dependents. So there would be one main member and then 3 dependents on this medical aid scheme. So for your section 6A medical tax credit, you would then be using 319 rands for the main member, plus 319 for the first dependent, plus 215 for the other 2 dependents. So you've got 1, 2, 3 dependents and a main member. So that was the case for how many months of the tax year? We are looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they were all on the medical aid scheme for only 9 months of the tax year. So your section 6A medical tax credit here would be 9,612. That you would claim as a rebate in the taxpayer's income tax calculation, but you also need this amount as an input into the section 6B additional medical tax credit, and we'll look at how it comes into the formula just now. You do need to know the age of the taxpayer for section 6B because it determines which formula you use. Remember, if the taxpayer is 65 years or older, then you would use the formula that applies at 33.3%. Or if the taxpayer is disabled, you would use that formula that applies 33.3%. Here we're working with a taxpayer who is not disabled and they're under the age of 65, so that means we'll be working with the 25% formula. You've also been given the taxpayer's taxable income for the current tax year as 100,000. That is relevant information. We'll need it in the formula. So this is what the working would look like. Let's just go through it. Your first starting point is to say what are the actual contributions that the taxpayer has made to the medical aid scheme. This amount came from the certificate. It was given to us. In some cases, you might have to work it out if it's given in a written format. Then the second step is to reduce the actual contributions by 4 times your section 6A rebate. So this 4 is prescribed in the legislation. It's not based on anything else. It just comes from the Act if you go and look at section 6B. we would take your Section 6A medical tax credits and multiply it by 4. So we had already calculated your Section 6A as 9,612, and now we would just multiply that by 4 to get to 38,448. So then that reduces your actual contributions. What you then do is you add the qualifying medical expenses. This is the crux of Section 6B. We've paid qualifying medical expenses that were not reimbursed by the scheme. So you would add the 838 rands and 65 cents, which is your qualifying medical expenses. Then it is useful to do a subtotal after that to make sure that you have a positive amount to then still carry on with the medical tax credit calculation. If this amount at this point is negative, the taxpayer will not get an Section 6B medical tax credit, because if it's negative, it means that there is no excess that remains of the actual, there's no excess of the actual contribution that remains after you've reduced it by 4 times your Section 6A and added the qualifying medical expenses. So we have a positive amount. Then the next step is to then reduce that amount by 7.5% of the taxable income. So that would be 7,500. And then you would subtotal again to just check that you will still have a positive amount. Then you would apply 25% to that 11,194 rands and 65 cents. So you apply 25% to then arrive at your Section 6B additional medical tax credit rebate. And this is the amount that would then reduce the normal tax payable by the taxpayer. I just want to highlight what would be different if you were doing the 33.3% calculation, just so you can be aware of the differences. Firstly, with the 33.3% calculation, this number is not 4, it would be 3. You would reduce your actual contributions by 3 times your Section 6A rebate. Secondly, this part here where you further reduce the amount by 7.5% of taxable income is not there if you're using the 33.3%. And then lastly, obviously, the percentage here would be 33.3%. So you would see that then the 33.3% formula is more beneficial for the taxpayer as compared to the 25% formula. So that is example 2. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, please do post on the discussion forum.